Still a cleaner. My dad's voice sliced through the glittering air of the ballroom sharp enough to turn 100 heads. Laughter rippled around the table like champagne fizzing in crystal flutes. I stood frozen, a silver tray still balanced in my trembling hands, my reflection warped in its polished surface. His friends CEOs. Judges, investors chuckled politely, unsure whether to laugh or look away. "Careful with that tray, Emily," Dad said, smirking. "Wouldn't want the boss to see fingerprints. If only he knew whose fingerprints already owned the room." The Walsh Foundation Gala had always been his kingdom, my father's temple of prestige, polished marble, and money disguised as manners. Every year he invited half the city's elite to celebrate charity, though the night always ended with him celebrating himself. This year, I hadn't planned to come. Not after what happened 2 years ago. Not after he told me I'd shamed the family by working as a cleaner. "You're wasting your education," he'd said. "You're scrubbing floors while your degree collects dust." But the catering company I worked for had been hired to serve the dinner, and fate, with its cruel sense of humor, placed me back inside the gilded cage I once called home. The ballroom gleamed in golden glass. Crystal chandeliers scattered light across the polished floor like starlight trapped in motion. The scent of white roses mingled with truffle and caviar. At the head table sat my father, Henry Walsh, in his black tuxedo and arrogance. My mother, Diana, wore pearls large enough to blind humility itself. My sister Claire glowed in her designer gown, laughing beside her fiancé, a young hedge fund manager who measured love in quarterly returns. And then there was me, invisible in a black uniform, hair tied back, pretending I didn't know the taste of that champagne I now poured for strangers. Every step I took echoed against the marble floor, every movement rehearsed, mechanical, perfect. That's what cleaning taught me. Perfection wasn't about grandeur, it was about precision. But Dad's eyes found me anyway. He recognized me instantly. "Emily." His voice carried smooth but cold, like the sound of glass about to break. The chatter dulled. Heads turned. I wanted to vanish behind the silver tray, but he was already standing, smiling, that tight politician's smile that fooled everyone but me. "Well, look who's joined the help," he said, loud enough for the entire table to hear. Laughter followed. Expensive laughter, the kind that didn't come from joy, only habit. "I see you found your calling," he added. "Still cleaning up after people, huh?" He raised his glass. Walsh never forgets her roots, even if they're on the floor. Heat rose to my cheeks. I bit the inside of my lips so hard I tasted iron. The tray in my hand wobbled slightly, but I steadied it before anyone noticed. I wanted to shout, to tell him that I wasn't just cleaning floors, that I was building something bigger, something he'd never understand. But all I did was nod, professional, silent. That's what dignity looked like when pride wasn't allowed to speak. Across the room, the event manager whispered into his earpiece, something about the royal guest's arrival. I froze. The royal guest. I knew who it was: Prince Adrian of Norland, heir to one of Europe's oldest monarchies and founder of the Global Renewal Fund, the man whose signature graced the contract that had changed my life forever. 2 years ago, while cleaning the offices of Wellington Industries, I'd met him. Not as a royal, but as a man who stayed late working on humanitarian projects. He saw me once mopping the marble floor, and instead of stepping around me, he'd asked, "Do you like your work?" And I told him yes, because it was honest. Because every mark I erased was proof I'd done something that mattered. He'd smiled then, a smile that didn't look down on me. That was the day my life began to change. The ballroom doors opened. The laughter faded. A hush spread across the hall like a wave retreating before a storm. Prince Adrian stepped inside, tall, elegant, wearing a simple black suit that somehow outshone every tuxedo in the room. His security detail moved discreetly behind him, their presence silent but unmistakable. Cameras clicked. Guests straightened their posture. My father's smirk faltered just slightly. The prince's eyes swept across the hall, then stopped on me. He froze. And then, to everyone's astonishment, he smiled. "Emily," he said softly, crossing the room as murmurs erupted around us. There you are. He reached me before anyone could process what was happening. Then, in front of 200 guests and my speechless father, he bowed slightly respectfully. My lady, what are you doing here? A glass shattered behind us, my father's. Every camera in the room turned toward me. Every whisper became a roar. I stood there still holding the silver tray, but suddenly it felt weightless. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't the cleaner in my father's story. I was a woman on my own. My father didn't move. His hand hovered above the broken glass red wine bleeding across the white tablecloth, like a wound that refused to close. The silence inside the ballroom was suffocating. I could feel 200 eyes flicking between the prince the cleaner and the man who used to call himself my father. Your lady, someone whispered from the press table, and the word rippled through the room like a secret trying to find its way home. Prince Adrian straightened his expression calm but unmistakably firm. Yes, he said clearly. Lady Emily Walsh. We've met before. He turned toward my father, offering the kind of polite smile that could end empires. Mr. Walsh, it's a pleasure to finally meet you. I've heard so much about your company. My father blinked, searching for composure. Your Highness? I didn't realize you. That's quite all right, Adrian interrupted, his tone soft but slicing. Emily and I go back a few years. She was instrumental in organizing the Global Renewal Initiative for my foundation. Her insight saved us from quite a few logistical disasters. I could hear the collective gasp around the room. The same people who had just been laughing were now craning their necks to get a better look at me. Emily. My mother's voice cracked. You worked with the prince. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Every word I wanted to say had been buried for years under her silence. Adrian looked back at me, his eyes gentle. Would you mind showing me the facility? I believe it's under the Walsh Global Portfolio now, isn't it? My father's confusion deepened. Facility, I finally found my voice. Yes, I said quietly. The Renewable Energy Research Center. I co-founded it 3 years ago. His eyes narrowed into slits of pure cold fury, the smirk on his face melting into a contortion of rage. What did you say? But before he could recover, Adrian turned to the room. Excuse us, he said smoothly, taking the tray from my hands and setting it aside. Then, lowering his voice, he added, You've been standing long enough, my lady. The title hung in the air like thunder waiting to break. When we stepped outside the ballroom, the night air hit my skin like freedom. The heavy doors closed behind us, muffling the chaos we'd left inside. Adrian waited until we were alone in the corridor before speaking. I didn't mean to startle you, he said, but when I saw how he treated you, I exhaled a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob. You couldn't have known. That's just who he is. I remember who you are, he said gently. The woman who refused to let her family name define her. The words stung not because they were untrue, but because they reminded me of everything I'd lost trying to prove it. I leaned against the marble wall, looking up at the chandelier overhead. He disowned me, you know. Said I wasn't fit to carry the Walsh name. So I made sure the Walsh name wouldn't carry me either. Adrian studied me for a long moment. You built that research center after he cut you off, didn't you? I nodded. I cleaned offices by day and managed proposals at night. When Wellington Industries opened the grant competition for renewable infrastructure, I pitched my plan. They didn't know my last name and I didn't tell them. I just needed one chance. And you got it, Adrian said softly. I got it because you believed in me. He smiled faintly. I believed in your conviction, Emily. You didn't want charity. You wanted partnership. That's rare in my world. I closed my eyes for a moment, trying to steady my breathing. Every image of the past came flooding back the night I packed my things from the house in San Diego, the words my father hurled at me like stones, the sound of the door locking behind me. You think you're better than this family, he'd shouted. Go earn something, without our name. Let's see how long you last. I had lasted. Barely. There were nights I slept in my car eating whatever the catering staff didn't finish. but I refused to crawl back. Now standing here in a silk uniform beneath the chandelier of my father's empire, I realized I hadn't crawled back at all. I'd walked back on my own terms. "Do you think he'll ever forgive me?" I asked suddenly, my voice smaller than I wanted it to be. Adrian's gaze softened. "You're asking the wrong question." "What's the right one? Will you forgive him?" I didn't answer, because forgiveness required feeling and I'd gone numb long ago. Back inside the ballroom, the tension had turned electric. I could see through the glass wall as reporters whispered into phones, guests exchanging wide-eyed glances. My father was at the head table pacing barking orders to the PR team. My mother sat rigid, dabbing her lipstick with a trembling napkin. When I returned Adrian beside me, the room fell silent again. "Everything all right, Your Highness?" someone asked timidly. "Perfect," he said. "I was just reminding Miss Walsh here of our upcoming project in London." "Project?" my father echoed. Adrian turned to him, smiling as if speaking to a child. "Yes. We're finalizing a renewable energy partnership with the Walsh name on it. Emily's foundation holds majority ownership, of course." Majority ownership. The words detonated quietly between us. My father's face was drained of color. "What are you saying?" I looked straight at him. "The research center wasn't just a project, Dad. It was the future of Walsh Global, the part you refused to fund. When you sold off our shares to pay for Claire's wedding, you forgot that Grandfather's will gave me 30% of the innovation branch. You signed it over without even reading the fine print. He choked on the words. "You manipulated, I survived," I said simply. "I turned your leftover division into a multi-million-dollar asset. The company you mocked me for cleaning now owns half your brand." Gasps rippled through the room. Cameras flashed. Somewhere behind me, my mother whispered my name, half in awe, half in fear. Adrian took a step forward. "It seems, Mr. Walsh," he said with a courteous smile, "that your daughter isn't just still a cleaner. She's the one who cleaned up your business model." My father staggered back, his lips parting, but no sound came out. For a long moment, no one moved. Then someone began to clap, hesitant at first, then louder, spreading like a wave through the hall. I didn't look at him again, because that night, surrounded by applause and flashing cameras, I realized something. Revenge wasn't loud. It was quiet. It was the sound of dignity returning to its rightful owner, and I finally felt clean. The morning light slid across my apartment floor like a quiet apology. Outside Charleston hummed with life, the street vendors shouting over car horns, the sound of gulls fighting over crumbs. My world felt small but clean, nothing like the marble cages my family called home. On the table beside me lay 3 newspapers. Each headline screamed a version of my story. The cleaner who outshined the CEO. Prince Adrian and his mysterious partner. Walsh family scandal shakes the market. I turned the papers over. I didn't need strangers to tell me who I was. For years I had worked invisible nights, mopping floors, scrubbing conference tables, building something that no one thought I was capable of. Now the world suddenly wanted to see me. Funny how people only pay attention when your story makes them uncomfortable. I was halfway through my coffee when someone knocked. I froze. No one visited me here. The sound came again, soft but insistent. When I opened the door, my mother was standing there, pearls-gone eyes, red coat still creased from travel. "Mom," I whispered, "can I come in?" The words came out uncertain, like she wasn't sure she still had the right. I stepped aside. She hesitated at the doorway before entering, her heels clicking awkwardly against the uneven floorboards. The apartment was small, neat, and honest, everything my old house wasn't. "You live here?" she asked, looking around as if the walls themselves were foreign. "I do," I said. "It's home." She walked toward the window, tracing the cracked paint with one manicured finger. "The news won't stop calling. Your father hasn't slept. You've humiliated him in front of everyone." I leaned against the counter. "I didn't humiliate him, Mom. He did that to himself." She turned sharply. "Don't talk like that. You don't understand what this will do to the company." "I understand perfectly," I said. He built his reputation on control, not truth. Now the truth has a microphone, and he's angry because he can't mute it. Her eyes softened. He's still your father. He's terrified, Emily. I took a deliberate step toward her, closing the gap. And I'm still his daughter, even if he pretends I'm not. He traded integrity for profit. I just held up the mirror. She closed her eyes. He'll never forgive you. Then that's his burden, not mine. She rose slowly, slipping the unsigned document back into her purse. You think you've won, but this isn't victory, Emily. It's isolated. When she left, I watched her car disappear down the street. The silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Later that afternoon, I drove to the research center by the harbor. The sun was dipping low, painting the glass walls in fire and gold. This was the part of the company no one cared about when it started too small, too risky, too unprofitable. But under my watch, it had grown into the most valuable division Walsh Global ever ignored. The staff greeted me warmly. Engineers in lab coats, interns with notebooks, janitors pushing carts. No hierarchy, no judgment. Just work. Real honest work. Prince Adrian was waiting for me in the conference room overlooking the water. He'd rolled up his sleeves and loosened his tie. His usual air of royalty replaced with something human. Quite the storm you caused, he said with a smile. I sank into the chair opposite him. I didn't mean for it to explode like that. He raised an eyebrow. Didn't you? I met his gaze and exhaled. Maybe a little. He slid a folder toward me. The legal review is complete. You officially control 30% of Walsh Global through your grandfather's trust. That gives you the voting majority over all innovation projects. The words hit harder than I expected. For years I'd been invisible. Now I was untouchable. Congratulations, Miss Walsh, he said softly. You've done what most people never could. You cleaned up an empire. I laughed under my breath. You make it sound noble. It is, he replied. Most people destroy what they hate. You rebuilt it instead. We stood by the window watching the waves crash against the pier. The water shimmered in the fading light, reflecting everything and nothing. He's going to fight me, I murmured. He'll drag me through court if he has to. Adrian nodded. Let him. You have truth on your side and the law. He underestimates you because he still sees you as the girl who carried trays. He doesn't realize that girl carried the company too. I looked at him. You sound like someone who's fought this battle before. He smiled faintly. My family thought working for charity was beneath me. They called it unroyal. But sometimes the noblest thing you can do is kneel to help someone stand. His words stayed with me long after he left. That night back at my apartment, I found another envelope under the door. The handwriting was unmistakable, my father's. Inside was a single line written in bold ink. You've embarrassed this family for the last time. You're not welcome at the board meeting. I read it twice, then laughed. He still hadn't learned. Because the next morning, whether he liked it or not, I was walking into that boardroom. And this time, I wouldn't be serving anyone. I'd be leading. The next morning, the air outside Walsh Global's headquarters was thick with fog and camera flashes. Reporters swarmed the front steps like vultures circling fresh news. Their questions were sharp, greedy. Miss Walsh, are you really the hidden shareholder? Did the royal family help you take control? How does it feel to overthrow your own father? I walked through the noise without answering the sound of my heels steady against the stone steps. Inside, the marble lobby gleamed exactly as it had when I cleaned it years ago. Only this time, I wasn't holding a mop. Every step toward the elevator carried a pulse of memory. I could still hear the hum of the vacuum, the late-night silence, the way executives had looked through me like I was air. I remembered my father's office door, always closed, always cold. Now that same door waited for me at the end of the boardroom hall. The receptionist glanced up from her desk, eyes wide. Miss Walsh, she stammered, they're already inside. Your father insisted the meeting start early. Of course he did, I said quietly. That's his favorite trick, control the clock, control the room. When I pushed open the door, 12 heads turned. My father stood at the head of the long mahogany table, his tie perfect, his smile forced. Well, he said, the prodigal daughter arrives. Good morning to you too, Dad. The air in the room was tense, sharp with cologne and resentment. The board members, a sea of gray suits and thin smiles, whispered among themselves. Emily. My father began voice-dripping civility before we continue. Let's clarify something. This is a private board meeting, not a publicity stunt. You have no right to be here. I set a folder on the table and slid it toward him. Actually, I do. As of 8 a.m., the trust documents from grandfather's estate were filed with the court. They confirm my ownership of 30% of the innovation division now merged into the parent company. That gives me controlling interest in this room. A murmur rippled through the table. My father's hand tightened on his pen. That's impossible. Those shares were transferred decades ago. To you, I said temporarily. The clause reverts ownership to the heir upon disinheritance or public humiliation. He froze. The color drained from his face. That's absurd. No, I said, that's poetic. The chairman, an older man named Gerald, cleared his throat. Is this true? Henry, did your father include such a clause? Henry didn't answer. He was too busy trying to breathe. I looked at the faces around the table, men who'd watched my father rule through intimidation, who'd kept silent to protect their bonuses. I'm not here to destroy this company, I said. I'm here to save what's left of it. The world's changing, and so should we. My father laughed bitterly. Save it. You think you can run Walsh Global with your janitor's ethics and your idealistic partnerships? This isn't charity work, Emily. It's business. I stepped closer, my voice calm but cutting. Then maybe business needs a little humanity. Because right now we're sitting on lawsuits, debt, and a reputation worth less than the stock it's printed on. One of the board members, a woman named Harriet, leaned forward. She's right. Our stock fell 20% last quarter. Investors are nervous. The press coverage might actually be helping us. My father shot her a glare sharp enough to silence. I built this empire from nothing. No, I said softly. Grandfather built it. You just turned it into a mirror. The words hit him like a slap. Adrian stepped into the room, then unannounced, calm as ever. His presence drew a visible shift, spines, straightened voices quieted. Forgive the intrusion, he said smoothly. I'm here as a partner of the Global Renewal Fund. We've been working with Miss Walsh for 2 years. Her leadership and vision have transformed our sustainability network. I'm prepared to expand our contract with Walsh Global under her direction. The room exploded with whispers. My father's voice cracked. You can't be serious. A royal endorsement. This is extortion, Adrian smiled faintly. It's business. You taught her well. I opened the folder again and handed a document to the chairman. Here's the new proposal. Reinvestment into worker safety, equal pay policy, and renewable infrastructure. It'll double productivity within a year. Harriet scanned the paper, impressed. She's done her homework. Another board member nodded. The projections are solid. My father slammed his hand on the table. You're all fools. You're going to let her destroy everything we built. No, I said quietly. I'm going to rebuild what you broke. For a long moment, silence hung between us like glass about to shatter. Then the chairman spoke. Henry, considering recent events, will need to take a vote on temporary leadership restructuring. My father's jaw clenched. You can't, I can, I said. Clause 12B of the board charter emergency succession upon conflict of interest or reputation damage. The chairman nodded. She's right. Let's proceed. The vote took less than 3 minutes. 10 in favor. 1 abstained. 1 against. When it was done, the room felt different, lighter somehow, though the tension hadn't left. My father's face was pale disbelief carved into every line. You can't do this, he whispered. I'm your father. I know, I said softly. And I loved you for years. But love isn't obedience. He looked like he might speak again, but the words never came. He turned and walked out, his footsteps echoing down the hall, fading like a shadow at dawn. The chairman stood. "Miss Walsh," he said, "the board welcomes you as interim chairwoman of Walsh Global." Applause filled the room, hesitant but real. I didn't smile. Not yet. Victory didn't feel like triumph. It felt like breathing after years underwater. Adrian approached, lowering his voice. "How does it feel?" "Like the floor's finally clean," I said. "But the walls still need scrubbing." He laughed quietly. "Then let's get to work." As the meeting adjourned, I glanced out the window at the city skyline, my city now. The sun had broken through the fog, turning the glass towers into pillars of light. For the first time, I wasn't the girl standing outside the boardroom door. I was the one who held the key. And I had no intention of locking it again. The applause had faded hours ago, but the sound still echoed in my mind as I stood in the empty conference room staring at the city through the glass wall. The skyline shimmered in the late afternoon sun, beautiful, distant, untouchable. My reflection looked like a stranger, composed, powerful, yet utterly exhausted. The cleaner had become the chairwoman, and the air at the top was thinner than I'd imagined. I pressed my palm against the cold glass, the surface so polished that it reflected every flicker of doubt. I remembered what Adrian had told me earlier that morning. Power doesn't cleanse guilt, Emily. It magnifies it. He wasn't wrong. Behind me, the door opened softly. It was Harriet, one of the few board members who hadn't treated me like a scandal in heels. "The press is camped outside," she said. "They want a statement about your appointment." I turned. "And what does the PR team suggest silence for now?" she replied. "Your father's lawyers are already feeding the media. They're saying you manipulated your way into the board using personal connections. Royal ones." I sighed. "Of course they are. The old playbook, if you can't discredit a woman's intelligence, question her alliances." Harriet smiled faintly. "You know I underestimated you at first. Everyone did. But the truth is, you scare them. You earned what they inherited. Earning things is what I do best," I said, forcing a small smile. As she left, I opened my laptop. The dashboard of Walsh Global glowed across the screen. Division's projects, employees, stock data. The company was massive, intricate, bleeding money through outdated systems and arrogance. My father had built an empire of glass, beautiful but fragile. A notification blinked. Stock price down 7%. The shareholders were nervous. Change always scares them more than corruption. My phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. "You think you've won? Check your email." H. I opened the inbox and saw it, an anonymous leak titled "Walsh Scandal, the Cleaner Queen." Dozens of attachments. Photos of me in my janitor uniform. Screenshots from years ago. Every piece of humiliation I thought I'd buried. And attached at the bottom, a false claim that my partnership with Adrian was personal, not professional. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. I could almost hear my father's voice in those headlines, "Still a cleaner." The door opened again and Adrian stepped in, jacket off, sleeves rolled. He took one look at my face and knew. "He's fighting back, isn't he?" "He's trying to break me," I said quietly. He always knew shame was my weak spot. "Then make it your weapon." I looked up. "How?" He walked closer, his expression steady. "Tell the truth before he twists it. The world already thinks they know your story, so give them the real one. You were a cleaner because you refused to beg. You worked because dignity isn't for sale. Turn the narrative into power." I stared at him, the idea sharp and terrifying. "You think that'll fix the stock?" He smiled. "Truth always raises value, just not the kind your father measures." I nodded slowly. "Let's call a press conference." Within hours, the board's media team assembled a small stage in the lobby. The marble floors gleamed under the spotlights, and the same reporters who'd chased me days ago now waited in silence. My hands shook slightly as I stepped to the podium, but my voice didn't. "My name is Emily Walsh," I began. "Some of you know me as the former cleaner who now owns the company her father once used to humiliate her. And that part is true. But what you don't know is why." I paused, scanning the faces. When I lost everything, my family, my name, my comfort, I didn't lose my worth. I found it, I worked night shifts cleaning offices that once displayed my family's portraits. I learned what real work looks like. I saw people whose names would never appear in reports, but whose effort kept this building alive. A murmur rippled through the room. The cameras clicked like heartbeats. I am not ashamed of where I came from, I continued. And if anyone thinks being a cleaner makes me less qualified to lead, they've never understood leadership, because leadership is service. It's knowing what it means to build something from the ground up and to clean up the mess others leave behind. A flash went off in the front row. I could see Adrian leaning against the railing, watching, nodding slightly. I took a breath. This company will no longer reward greed and cruelty. We're launching a new initiative, profit sharing for all staff, including janitors, cooks, and maintenance workers. They built this empire too. It's time they own a piece of it. The reporters erupted with questions. Miss Walsh, what about your father's statements? Is it true you're romantically involved with Prince Adrian? I smiled. No, Prince Adrian is my business partner. But if I've learned anything, it's that partnership, royal or otherwise, means respect, not ownership. The crowd laughed lightly, the tension breaking. When the conference ended, the noise felt like static fading into calm. Adrian joined me backstage. That he said softly was brilliant. It was necessary, I replied. People can't use what you've already owned. He looked proud. The stock's already climbing back up. Good, I said. Because tomorrow I'm calling an emergency audit. If my father wants a war, I'll fight with numbers. Adrian chuckled. A very dangerous kind of revenge. No, I said, picking up my bag. A very clean one. As I walked out into the night, the city lights glimmered across the wet pavement. Somewhere behind those glass towers, my father was plotting his next move. But for the first time, I wasn't afraid. He could fight me with money, with lies, with old power. I had something stronger: truth, purpose, and the courage to scrub the dirt off an empire that had forgotten what integrity looked like. The cleaner was still here. And this time, she was cleaning the house. The rain started just as I left the building, a slow drizzle that blurred the streetlights into streaks of gold. My reflection followed me in every puddle, power suit, wet hair, tired eyes. I'd won a battle today, but wars don't end with applause. They end in silence and paperwork, in the slow grind of truth, cutting through corruption. By the time I reached my apartment, the storm had thickened. Lightning flared against the windows as I threw my soaked coat over a chair. My phone vibrated on the counter, an encrypted message from an unknown number. Meet me at Pier 9. Midnight. It's about your father. For a moment I considered ignoring it. Then I remembered what Adrian said earlier that day. If he's cornered, he'll strike where you least expect. Pier 9 was quiet at midnight, the air thick with salt and secrets. A shadow stepped out from behind a shipping crate. It was Daniel, one of my old co-workers from my cleaning days at Walsh Global. His face looked worn, older, like someone who'd seen too much. Emily, he whispered, I shouldn't even be talking to you. Your father's men, they've been asking questions. About what? He hesitated, eyes darting toward the water. There's a file. Hidden accounts. Offshore shares. He's been laundering company money for years, millions through dummy foundations. The rain hissed between us like static. Where is it? I asked. In the old data center on Glass Hill, locked in the mainframe. I saw him once past midnight logging in. He didn't even notice me. I remembered that place. The cold server rooms humming like 1,000 mechanical hearts. Why tell me now? Because he's planning to erase it all, Daniel said. Tomorrow night. He hired a private IT team. Once it's gone, there's no proof. Lightning lit the dock, washing his face in white. Take this, he said, slipping a small flash drive into my hand. Backup codes. I made a copy of the access sequence before I quit. Be careful, Emily. He'd rather see you ruined than exposed. By the time I looked up again, he was gone, swallowed by the rain. Back in my apartment, I stared at the drive on my desk. My father's empire had always looked spotless from the outside: philanthropy dinners, charity auctions, glossy magazines showing his smile. But I knew better. Every spotless surface hides what someone else had to clean away. The next morning I called Adrian. "I need a favor," I said. "I had a feeling you'd say that," he replied. "What's the job, Glass Hill Data Center? Midnight tonight. I need access, and I need someone who can keep their mouth shut." "Sounds illegal." "Technically, it's my company," I said. "Technically, you're about to break into your own property," he said dryly. "I'll be there." By midnight, we were in the server room. The building smelled like cold metal and old electricity. The hum of the machines was constant, like the heartbeat of something still alive. Adrian worked the keypad while I connected the drive. The screen flickered to life, thousands of encrypted files labeled under fake subsidiaries. "Here," I said, opening one. "Royal Port Foundation Cayman account." Adrian's eyes widened. "That's over $50 million in undeclared assets." I scrolled through page after page. False donations, redirected profits, government contracts with inflated numbers. My father had built a kingdom of lies, and I was standing in its heart. Then a soft click and the lights above us flickered violently. We froze. Heavy footsteps echoed down the corridor, too slow to be a guard. "No," I said quietly. "He's here." The door opened. My father stepped inside, wearing the same expensive calm he always used to hide chaos. "I wondered how long it would take you to find this place." "Long enough to see what you've been hiding," I said. He smiled, slow and cruel. "You think you understand power, Emily, but you don't. Power isn't earned, it's taken. And I took what the world owed me." "You stole from the company." "I built the company," he snapped. "Every number on those screens exists because of me. I created the wealth you're so desperate to cleanse." "And what did you do?" "Sweeping floors." His words were acid, but I'd already burned through shame years ago. "You built a throne on other people's backs, and now it's cracking." Adrian moved between us. "We've copied everything," he said. "Even if you destroy the servers, the data's safe." My father turned to him with cold fury. "You're making a mistake, Prince. You think siding with her makes you noble? You're aligning yourself with a scandal." Adrian met his stare evenly. "No, I'm aligning myself with the truth." For a moment, the only sound was the hum of the machines. Then my father's voice dropped to a whisper. "You'll regret this." He turned and left, his footsteps fading into the hall, leaving the weight of his threat behind. I exhaled, realizing I'd been holding my breath. Adrian looked at me. "He's not done. That man won't go quietly." "I know," I said, "but neither will I." We uploaded the last of the data to a secure cloud and left as the lights flickered, the servers pulsing like the dying heart of a guilty empire. Outside, the sky was still dark, but I felt the faintest glimmer of dawn breaking behind the clouds. For the first time, I wasn't the one cleaning up his mess. I was exposing it. And this time, no amount of money could polish what I'd uncovered. The morning after Glass Hill, the news hit faster than the sunrise. Every major outlet ran the same headline: "Walsh Global, under investigation, CEO accused of fraud." My father's face was everywhere, grim-cornered, unrecognizable. And beneath each photo, my name followed like a shadow, his daughter exposed the truth. I hadn't planned for this kind of attention. My inbox was a storm, lawyers, reporters, shareholders, even strangers offering sympathy or judgment in equal measure. Adrian called before I could process it all. "You need to come to the embassy," he said. "Now." The embassy. That meant something official, something serious. When I arrived, the guards ushered me through metal detectors and marble corridors that smelled faintly of cedar and power. Prince Adrian waited in a private meeting room overlooking the harbor. His suit was crisp, his expression unreadable. "You're trending worldwide," he said. "Your father's lawyers are calling it corporate espionage. They're claiming you stole classified data." I laughed once bitterly. "He steals millions, I expose it, and I'm the criminal. Welcome to the theater of the powerful," Adrian said. "But you're not alone in this. The palace has taken notice." My pulse stuttered. "The palace." He nodded. Her Majesty's Trust Fund has indirect investments in Walsh Global. They've been affected by your father's schemes. The royal office wants a meeting today. The words hung in the air like a thunderclap. Wait, I said slowly. You told them about me. I didn't need to, he replied. They already knew. The Queen has been watching your story. She wants to meet you to protect the Royal Trust's reputation and restore investor confidence. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. Why, Adrian smiled faintly. Because you did what most people in power never dare to do, clean the floor they walk on. By noon, a black car was waiting outside. The drive to the royal estate was quiet, the world blurring past in shades of green and gold. I tried not to think about how surreal it felt less than a year ago I was scrubbing offices at midnight. Now I was being escorted to meet a queen. When we arrived, the estate was exactly as I imagined: vast lawns, stone walls older than memory, and guards who moved with choreographed grace. Adrian led me through a corridor lined with portraits, generations of faces that had shaped nations. "She'll see you alone," he said at the door. "Just be yourself." The room beyond was filled with light. At its center sat a woman in her late 70s, silver hair pinned neatly, eyes sharper than glass. "Miss Walsh," she said. "Please sit." I did. My hands trembled slightly in my lap. "I've read about your situation," she continued. "You've exposed corruption at great personal cost. That requires courage. Or recklessness," I said before I could stop myself. The Queen smiled. "The two often travel together." For a moment, silence stretched between us, comfortable, deliberate. She leaned forward. "Your father's actions have compromised several international funds. My advisors tell me your evidence is airtight. But Henry Walsh has influence. He will not fall quietly. Are you prepared for what comes next?" I met her gaze. "I didn't come this far to stop now." Her eyes softened. "Good. Then you'll have my support. Prince Adrian will serve as liaison between your company and the Royal Trust. Together we'll stabilize the market and prevent further damage." I blinked, stunned. "You're backing me?" "Not you," she said. "The truth. But I believe you carry it well." Before I could reply, a secretary entered, whispering something urgent. The Queen's expression changed. "It seems your father has just filed an injunction to freeze your assets. You'll be cut off financially until the case concludes." My stomach twisted. "That's everything I have." "Not quite," Adrian's voice said from the doorway. He stepped in, holding a folder. "The palace legal team has already counterfiled. The injunction won't stand." The Queen rose gracefully. "Then it's settled. Mr. Walsh will face his own reflection soon enough." As she left the room, I exhaled shakily. I don't even know how to thank her. "You just did," Adrian said. "You showed her integrity still exists." We drove back to the city in silence. I stared out the window at the endless skyline, the world spinning faster than I could keep up. When we reached my office, the lobby was chaos, reporters shouting, cameras flashing, security barely holding them back. My assistant rushed forward, pale and breathless. "Miss Walsh, there's something you need to see." In the boardroom, the monitors glowed with live footage. My father, calm, polished, and furious, was holding his own press conference. "My daughter," he said to the cameras, "has betrayed her family. She's being manipulated by foreign powers to undermine American business. The so-called evidence she presented was fabricated by outsiders seeking control." The reporters erupted. I felt my throat tighten. Adrian glanced at me. "He's painting you as a traitor." "I expected as much," I said, voice steady. "Let him talk." "But public opinion, I'll fix it," I interrupted. "We'll show them who he really is." That evening, I went live on the company's official channel. No script, no PR team. Just me and the truth. My father says I betrayed him. I began looking straight into the lens. But what he calls betrayal, I call accountability. This isn't about family revenge or royal politics. It's about justice. About cleaning what's been buried under wealth and silence. I held up the flash drive. Every file on this drive has been verified by independent auditors and international regulators. If you doubt me, verify it yourself. Transparency isn't a threat, it's freedom. The video spread like wildfire. Comments flooded in. Some called me brave, others called me naive. But one message stood out pinned to the top from the official royal account: the truth is never treason. Her Majesty. The world had chosen a side. That night, as I stood on my balcony watching the rain return, I realized something. Power didn't corrupt everyone. It revealed them. And mine had just begun to shine. The next 48 hours were a blur of noise, headlines, and phone calls that blurred into one endless loop: Walsh versus Walsh, the cleaner queen versus the corporate king. Family empire crumbles under scandal. The internet turned my life into a battlefield, every click a bullet, every opinion a bruise. I barely slept, between meetings with auditors, interviews, and crisis management briefings. The days melted together. But in the quiet moments between the chaos and the cameras, I found myself thinking about the one thing no headline ever mentioned: my mother. She hadn't spoken since the fallout began. No calls, no messages, not even a rumor. For a woman who once filled every silence with orders and commentary, her absence was deafening. That's why when I returned to my apartment late that night and found her sitting in the dark on my couch, I didn't scream. I just froze. Mom. She turned her head slowly. Her eyes looked smaller somehow. The sharpness gone, replaced by something that almost resembled humility. "You're hard to reach these days," she said softly. "Reporters tend to keep me busy," I replied, switching on a lamp. "How did you even get in? I still have a key," she said. "Or did you forget I sat across from her? I thought you'd picked your side." Her lips tightened. "It's not that simple. It never is with you." Silence stretched between us until she spoke again, her voice trembling in a way I'd never heard before. "Your father, he's losing control. He's desperate, Emily. He's not eating, not sleeping. The board's turning against him. He blames you for everything." I met her gaze. He should. He built this mess. Her eyes filled with tears she refused to let fall. "He's still your father. He gave me conditions," I said. "Love that had to be earned, respect that never came, a family that existed only for show. You taught me everything about success except how to be happy." She flinched. "You think I didn't try to protect you?" "You protected his image." "No," she said, shaking her head. "I protected what I thought was stability. I grew up poor, Emily. You don't know what it's like to watch everything slip away. When I married your father, I swore I'd never go back there. So you chose security over love. I chose survival." Her honesty hit harder than anger ever could. For the first time, I saw her not as the perfect wife or the silent accomplice, but as a woman terrified of losing everything she'd built her identity around. She stood and walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. "He's preparing something," she said. "A counterattack. I don't know the details, but he met with a private investigator 2 nights ago. He wants to discredit you, completely, find anyone that can be twisted." I clenched my fists. "Then I'll be ready." "Emily," she whispered, turning back to me. "Don't destroy yourself. Trying to destroy him?" "I'm not destroying him," I said. "I'm setting the record straight." She took a slow breath. "You sound just like him." Her words cut deep, but before I could respond, she placed something on the coffee table, a small leather-bound notebook. "What's that?" "Your grandfather's journal," she said quietly. "I found it in the old study before your father could burn it. It's about the company. About you." My heart stills. "About me," she nodded. "He wrote that he built Walsh Global, not for your father, but for you. Said he saw in you something he'd lost in Henry, a sense of fairness, of purpose." She turned to leave but paused at the door. "He believed you'd clean the family name someday. Maybe he knew this would happen." After she left, I sat alone for hours flipping through the journal. The handwriting was rough but strong: notes, sketches, reminders of a man who'd built an empire with his hands. One passage stood out, underlined twice. "If power corrupts the bloodline, let truth cleanse it." He also left a marginal note. A tiny sketch of the trust document. "A safety net against arrogance. Once shame is public, the balance shifts." I didn't fully understand it then, but the word shame pulsed on the page. I didn't realize I was crying until a tear smudged the ink. The next morning I called Adrian. I found something I said, something my grandfather left behind. He arrived within the hour. I handed him the journal. This changes everything he said, scanning the pages. If this proves your grandfather intended the trust for you, not just inheritance but moral authority, it strengthens your position legally and ethically. I nodded. It also means I have to finish what he started. Adrian looked at me. That's going to cost you. Everything worth doing does. Later that day, I held a private meeting with the board. The evidence from the journal combined with the audit files painted a damning picture of my father's decades of manipulation. The room was heavy with silence when I finished presenting. Effective immediately, I said, Henry Walsh is suspended from all executive duties pending investigation. The chairman looked uneasy. You're removing your own father. I'm removing a criminal, I said. His title doesn't protect him from consequence. One by one they voted. The motion passed unanimously. After the meeting, I stepped outside into the crisp afternoon air. My phone buzzed again, an unknown number. I almost ignored it until I saw the message, "You think you've won. But you don't know what he's capable of. He's not done yet." The number was blocked. No name. But I didn't need one. I already knew who it was. My father wasn't retreating. He was regrouping. And this time, the next move wouldn't be in the boardroom. It would be personal. The city was asleep when I woke to the sound of glass shattering. For one wild second, I thought it was a dream until the crash came again, louder, closer. My heart stuttered as I slipped out of bed. The apartment was dark except for the faint blue glow of the city through my window. Then I saw it, the front door half open, the frame splintered. I grabbed the nearest thing I could find, a heavy brass lamp, and moved slowly toward the living room. The air smelled of rain and metal. A figure stood by my desk, his silhouette sharp against the faint light. "Put it down, Emily," my father's voice said. Calm, too calm. My pulse spiked. "How did you get in?" He turned toward me, smiling faintly. "I still have keys to everything I built. I didn't lower the lamp." "You shouldn't be here." "I could say the same about you," he replied. "In my company. In my world." "This isn't your world anymore," I said. He stepped closer, and for the first time in months, I saw the cracks in him. His suit was wrinkled, his tie loose, his eyes bloodshot. Power had always made him look invincible. Now he just looked human. "I warned you, Emily," he said softly. "You could have walked away with money with dignity. But no, you had to play the hero." "Hero," I said, voice shaking. "I just stopped cleaning your lies." He laughed bitterly. "And replaced them with your own. I haven't lied about anything." He pointed to the window where lights from across the street blinked the paparazzi waiting for another photo of the fallen dynasty. "You're feeding on this. You love it. The attention, the power. You're no different from me." I took a step back. "The difference is I don't destroy people to stay relevant." His hand slammed against the wall, and I flinched. "You think I destroyed you? I gave you everything. You gave me conditions," I said. "Love that had to be earned, respect that never came, a family that existed only for show. You taught me everything about success except how to be happy." His shoulders rose and fell, his breathing uneven. "You don't understand what it takes to survive in this world. I understand enough to know I don't want to survive like you." He stared at me, eyes gleaming with something almost desperate. "You think this is justice? Turning your father into a headline, destroying our name." "Our name was already destroyed," I said quietly. "You just made sure the stain was permanent." He stepped back, his voice low and trembling. "You think a flash drive is enough? I moved the assets, all of them. And by morning, I will ensure the law sees you not as a savior, but as a thief who conspired with a royal. You're finished, Emily." Before I could ask, he turned and walked out into the hall, the sound of his footsteps fading into the night. My phone buzzed. A message from Adrian, "Don't go anywhere. He's setting you up. Meet me at the office now." Minutes later, I was in a car slicing through the wet streets, my mind racing. When I reached the building, Adrian was waiting in the lobby, flanked by two of his security advisors. "He's filed a motion," Adrian said, handing me a printed document. "He's claiming you colluded with the Royal Trust for personal gain, that you sold internal company data for stock leverage." "That's insane." He nodded grimly. "Insane but dangerous. If the courts believe it, it could trigger that clause in your grandfather's trust." I sank into a chair, my pulse thundering. "So what do we do?" Adrian hesitated. "There's something else. The palace wants you to come to London. Her Majesty is preparing a statement, one that could protect you. But if you go, your father will say you ran. And if I stay, he'll bury you in court before the week's over." I rubbed my temples. "He's forcing me to choose between integrity and survival." Adrian crouched in front of me. "No, he's forcing you to choose what kind of leader you are. Do you fight on his terms, or rewrite the rules?" I looked up at him, the weight of the last few months crashing down like a wave. "I've been fighting him my whole life," I said quietly. "But maybe it's time I stop fighting and start leading." That night I made my decision. Before dawn, I recorded a video, one meant not for the court or the media, but for the employees who still believed in the company. My voice was calm, but my eyes burned. Walsh Global was built on hard work, not corruption. And if truth costs me my fortune, so be it. I won't clean what should be torn down. I ended the recording and hit send. It went viral within hours. When I arrived at the airport that afternoon, reporters swarmed the gate. Cameras flashed, questions fired, but I kept walking. I wasn't running. I was crossing oceans to bring the fight where it started, not just to clear my name, but to finish what my grandfather had begun. And this time, I wouldn't be cleaning up after anyone. I'd be setting the record straight once and for all. The jet touched down in London under a slate-gray sky. Rain slicked the tarmac, streaking the windows like the world itself was bleeding ink. I hadn't slept in almost 20 hours. The moment the cabin door opened, a gust of cold air hit my face, sharp, cleansing, almost cruel. Adrian was waiting at the base of the stairs, already surrounded by his detail. "Welcome back to the center of the storm," he said with a weary smile. "I never left it," I replied. We rode in silence through the city, the streets glistening with early morning traffic. The palace loomed ahead like a fortress carved from history, impenetrable, commanding, impossible to ignore. Inside, every corridor smelled of old wood and diplomacy. A private chamber had been prepared for the meeting. Heavy curtains, polished floors, the quiet hum of authority. Her Majesty was already there when I entered, seated beneath a portrait of her younger self. "Miss Walsh," she said, "you've had quite the week. I seem to collect those lately." The faintest smile touched her lips. "Sit. We have much to discuss." I obeyed. Adrian stood behind her, hands clasped behind his back, part guardian, part witness. "Your father's campaign is spreading faster than we anticipated," the Queen began. "The accusation of collusion has made investors nervous. The American media is calling this a family war. Our press, however, calls it a reckoning." Her gaze fixed on me. "Do you understand the weight of that word, Miss Walsh?" "Yes, Your Majesty. It means the truth's about to be paid for." "Good," she said, leaning back. "Then let's ensure the right people foot the bill." She nodded to an aide who placed a folder on the table between us. "These are records from the Royal Trust's auditors. They've been monitoring Walsh Global for months. Your father's name appears on multiple offshore accounts, tied to government contracts, some of which intersect with royal investments." My heart dropped. "He was laundering through the trust indirectly," Adrian said. "He funneled money through shell partners that used the trust's philanthropic branches as cover. It's a web of deceit. But your evidence helps expose the structure." Her Majesty studied me carefully. "You understand what this means, don't you? If we move forward, it won't just destroy your father's company. It will shake the markets. Entire families' fortunes may collapse." I took a breath. Then maybe it's time those fortunes learned what honesty costs. The Queen's eyes softened, pride flickering beneath the steel. You remind me of my younger self. Reckless, righteous, terribly inconvenient. Adrian chuckled quietly. That's one word for her. The Queen ignored him. The royal office will issue a formal statement supporting your evidence. But be warned, Miss Walsh. Truth always demands a price. Once we release this, there will be no going back. I don't want to go back, I said simply. She nodded. Then so be it. The statement was released within hours. By noon, it dominated every global network. The Crown backs Emily Walsh in fraud investigation. Royal endorsement confirms evidence against Henry Walsh. Stocks plummeted for my father's holding companies while my own division's value doubled overnight. The empire was shifting, not destroyed yet, but cracking. The public reaction was chaos. Commentators called it unprecedented, a royal alliance with a corporate whistleblower. My inbox exploded with both admiration and hate. People wanted to make me a symbol. I just wanted to finish this war. That evening, I stood at the balcony of the guest suite overlooking the city. London stretched beneath me, glittering, endless, ancient. Adrian joined me holding 2 glasses of whiskey. To survive, he said. I took mine. To exposure. We clinked glasses, the sound soft and clean. You did it, Emily, he said. You've turned the tide. Not yet, I murmured. He won't surrender quietly. He studied me. Do you still love him? The question caught me off guard. I stared into the glass, watching the amber light ripple. I don't know. I think I love who I thought he could be. Adrian nodded slowly. Sometimes love isn't the opposite of hate. It's the thing that keeps you from hating enough. We stood in silence for a while, the wind pulling at our clothes, carrying the hum of the city below. A phone buzzed inside the suite. Adrian answered, then turned to me. That was the palace security team. There's been an incident at your father's estate. My blood ran cold. What kind of incident, they didn't say. Only that you need to come. The drive to Surrey felt endless. Flashing lights greeted us at the gates, police cars, press vans, the glare of chaos. I pushed through the crowd, my stomach twisting. The front door was open, the marble foyer dim under the storm-gray sky. A detective met us halfway down the hall. Miss Walsh, he asked quietly. Yes, I said. He hesitated. I'm sorry. Your father was found unconscious in his study. An overdose. The paramedics are stabilizing him now. My breath caught. Is he alive? For now. The words hit like a hammer, too hard, too slow. I felt Adrian's hand on my shoulder, grounding me. Hours passed in fragments. The hospital was sterile, humming with fluorescent light. Machines beeped rhythmically beside my father's bed. His face was pale, his hands trembling even in sleep. I wanted to hate him. I wanted to feel nothing. But the sight of him like that, broken small, tore something loose inside me. Adrian stood quietly by the door. You don't have to stay, he said. Yes, I whispered. I do. I sat there until morning, listening to the steady rhythm of the heart monitor. For the first time in my life, my father wasn't the man who towered over me. He was just human, fragile, fallible, and painfully real. The dawn light spilled through the blinds, washing the room in soft gold. I reached out and took his hand. You can't undo this, I said softly. But maybe you can stop running from it. He didn't wake. But for a moment, I thought I felt his fingers twitch. Outside, the world waited for another headline. Inside, for the first time, I didn't care. Because some truths don't need cameras, they just need witnesses. The morning after my father's overdose, London felt eerily quiet. The storm had passed, but the city seemed to hold its breath. From my hotel window, I could see the headlines flashing across digital billboards. Henry Walsh in coma. Amid corporate scandal, his name flickering like a dying signal in the heart of the financial district he once ruled. I should have felt relief. Justice, victory, vindication. Instead, all I felt was exhaustion. Adrian arrived shortly after sunrise, carrying 2 coffees and a stack of newspapers. "He's stable," he said softly, setting the papers aside. "But the damage is done both to him and to the company." I nodded, staring at the rain-slick glass. "How bad?" "Stock is down 30%. Investors are pulling assets." But he hesitated. "Your name's different. Public sentiment's shifting. You're not the scandal anymore, Emily. You're the reformer." The word didn't comfort me. Reformers were martyrs with better press. Before I could reply, the doorbell rang. Adrian opened it to reveal 2 palace aides, both in tailored gray suits. "Miss Walsh," one said, bowing slightly. "Her Majesty requests your presence this afternoon. There's to be a formal hearing regarding the Royal Trust." I stood. "A hearing," an inquiry the other clarified. "Your testimony will determine whether the Royal Trust continues its partnership with Walsh Global or severs it permanently." I exhaled slowly. The final judgment. The moment when the world would decide whether I was a savior or traitor. The hearing chamber was unlike any courtroom I'd ever seen. Vaulted ceilings, marble floors, walls lined with portraits of monarchs who'd ruled long before any of us mattered. At the center sat the Queen herself, flanked by advisors and auditors. Adrian stood beside me, silent but steady. "Miss Walsh," the Queen began, her tone regal, but not unkind. "You stand before us not as a defendant, but as a witness to your own truth. Do you understand the gravity of this?" "Yes, Your Majesty." "Good." She folded her hands. "Then let's begin." A senior auditor stepped forward, opening a thick binder. "We've reviewed over 10 years of financial data from Walsh Global. The evidence indicates systemic fraud under Henry Walsh's leadership. However," he looked at me, "there are also irregularities surrounding your own acquisitions through the Royal Trust. Would you care to explain?" I met his gaze. "Every share I acquired was through public trade. Transparent, documented. My only goal was to restore integrity to a company that lost its way." "Yet you benefited personally," he pressed. "Yes," I said evenly. "Because I earned it. Not through deceit, but through accountability." A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Queen raised a hand, and silence returned like a tide. "You speak of integrity," she said. "But integrity isn't just about what you earn. It's about what you're willing to lose." Her words struck something deep within me. I swallowed hard. "Then I'm willing to lose everything, Your Majesty, except the truth." The room stilled. Even Adrian looked at me, eyes unreadable. After a pause, the Queen rose. "Then let it be recorded. The Crown withdraws all holdings from Henry Walsh's control and transfers oversight to Emily Walsh, effective immediately. In addition, the Royal Trust will fund the Walsh Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to labor equity and ethical business reform." I blinked. "Wait, Your Majesty, are you saying the weight of the silver tray I once carried felt heavier than any crown? I didn't want ownership. I wanted to be seen. This wasn't victory. This was service on a global scale. I wasn't just fixing the company. I was responsible for its soul." "You're the new custodian," she said, "of what remains, and of what comes next." The chamber erupted in quiet applause, reserved, diplomatic but real. Adrian exhaled beside me, tension finally breaking from his shoulders. When the session ended, I stepped outside into the courtyard. The rain had stopped, leaving the world washed and raw. Adrian joined me, tucking his hands into his coat pockets. "Well, he said you just made history." "I didn't want history," I replied. "I wanted peace." He smiled faintly. "Peace is what comes after you earn it." I looked up at the gray sky, feeling the first hint of sunlight breaking through. "Then maybe I'm finally ready." Before I could say more, my phone buzzed. A message. Unknown number. I opened it and froze. A single photo filled the screen, my father awake, sitting upright in his hospital bed, eyes cold and alert. Beneath it a message, "You think the board belongs to you. Let's see how long they follow a cleaner." My breath caught. Adrian saw the screen and swore softly. "He's awake." "Not just awake," I said quietly. "He's planning his next move." Adrian's expression hardened. "You have control now. You don't need to engage him." But I already knew I would, because this wasn't just about control anymore, it was about legacy. That evening I visited the hospital alone. The guard recognized me and let me in without question. The corridor smelled like antiseptic and regret. My father was sitting up a newspaper in his lap before, still in his arm. "Come to gloat," he said, his voice rasping but sharp. "I didn't come here to win, Dad," I said. "I came because we don't need to lie anymore. We can stop fighting the truth, and with it, we can finally be honest. With ourselves and with the name we carry." His smirk faded. "You'll regret this, Emily." Maybe I said, "But at least it'll be my choice." I left without another word. Outside, the night air was a bit cold against my skin, but it felt clean, sharp, honest. Adrian was waiting by the car. "Well," he asked. "He's still fighting," I said. "But so am I." The city stretched before us, glittering and uncertain. I climbed into the car, watching the lights blur as we drove toward the future neither of us could fully see. For the first time in my life, I wasn't following anyone's script, not my father's, not society's, not even fate's. The war was ending, but the reckoning had only just begun. The first time I walked into the Walsh Global Headquarters as its official CEO, every sound in the marble lobby seemed to echo against my chest: the click of heels, the murmur of employees, the rhythm of cameras outside waiting to record the day. The janitor's daughter took the throne. A month later, after months of rebuilding and quiet reform, the conference room was filled with shareholders and press, the same crowd that once watched my father humiliate me. The air crackled with a strange mix of reverence and tension. "Ms. Walsh," the moderator said as cameras flashed, "today marks your first annual report as CEO. Do you have any opening remarks?" I looked around the room. Every face reflected curiosity, maybe even awe. I took a breath. "Yes," I said, "I do." Silence fell. "My father taught me that power was something you took," I began, "and that people only respected what they feared. But I've learned that real power isn't about fear. It's about responsibility, about building something that outlives your ego." I paused, meeting the eyes of the board members who once voted me out of family dinners. For decades, this company survived on secrecy, manipulation, and exploitation. That ends today. Walsh Global will now dedicate 30% of its annual profits to the Walsh Foundation for Worker Education, Healthcare, and Sustainable Innovation. A few gasps. One or two murmurs of protest. "Some of you," I continued, "will call this charity. I call it strategy. When we invest in people, we invest in longevity. The markets will catch up." Applause started hesitant, then spreading. Cameras clicked. The flash felt different this time. Not invasive, illuminating. After the meeting, Adrian caught up to me in the hallway, a knowing smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. "You realize you just terrified every old money investor in that room?" I smiled back. "Good. Fear is motivating. I learned that from the best." He chuckled softly. "And how's the Queen? She sent flowers. Told me I'd proven her gamble right." We stepped into my office, no longer the sterile, imposing room it had once been under my father's reign. The portraits of men in tailored suits were gone, replaced by photographs of workers, engineers, and field teams from around the world. Real people. Real worth. But on my desk sat something unexpected, an envelope sealed in the deep burgundy wax of the Walsh family crest. My breath hitched. There was no note. Just a single line written in my father's unmistakable hand: "Meet me where it began." I didn't need directions. That evening, I found myself outside the old mansion on Harbor Hill, the same house where he'd once thrown his lavish dinner parties, where the words, "still a cleaner," had shattered something inside me. Now it stood empty, stripped of the grandeur that once defined it. He was waiting inside, standing near the fireplace, a cane in one hand. The illness had taken weight from him, but his presence was still heavy like gravity. "I thought you'd ignore my letter," he said quietly. "I thought you'd stop writing them," I replied. He gave a small, tired laugh. "You've done well. The company's thriving. The press loves you. Even the palace trusts you. I didn't do it for them," I said. "I did it because it's right." He nodded slowly. You sound like your grandfather. He built this family on integrity. You built it on fear. I rebuilt it in truth. I was a fool. I spent my life polishing the marble while you were building the foundation. Your grandfather knew. He knew that the strength wasn't in the glass tower. It was in the hands that held the broom. I should have followed you, not fought you. He reached into his coat and pulled out a small key. Your grandfather left this to me. I'm giving it to you. I turned it over in my palm, an old brass key engraved with the initials WG. What does it open? The original factory vault, he said. The first safe. Everything started there. The first shares, the first contracts, even the first set of tools he used when he was just a worker. He wanted whoever truly understood work to inherit it. I stared at the key, realizing the weight of what he was giving me. For what it's worth, he said quietly, you were right. It wasn't the money that built our legacy. It was the people willing to clean the floor before they sat at the table. He smiled faintly. Guess that's you now. I felt tears sting my eyes. Goodbye, Dad. He nodded. Goodbye, my daughter. When I left the house, the night air was cool and still. The world outside seemed endless, but for once it didn't feel like something I had to conquer, just something I belonged to. A month later, at the reopening of the original factory, I placed that brass key inside a glass display. Above it, a plaque read, "From the cleaner's hands, we built an empire." The crowd applauded. I saw the same workers who'd once been invisible, now standing at the front, proud and seen. Among them, a young woman in a janitor's uniform smelt us up at me. For a moment, I saw myself in her, the girl who once held a silver tray and stood in shame while the world laughed. Now I stood taller. Not because I was rich or powerful, but because I had proven that dignity doesn't depend on who you serve, but how you rise. As I looked out over the factory floor, sunlight streaming through the tall glass windows, I realized the story was no longer about revenge. It was about redemption, his mine, and everyone who'd ever been told they didn't belong at the table. So if you've ever been underestimated, dismissed, or laughed at, remember this: the same hands that clean the floor can one day hold the key to the entire building. And when that day comes, don't just take your seat. Redefine the whole table. If you followed my story this far, thank you. Share it, comment, tell me where you're watching from. Because somewhere out there, another cleaner is still waiting for her moment. And when her doors finally open, the world will bow just like they did for me.